Okay, so I just want to talk about the touch response mechanism of the piano. Essentially, the touch response mechanism of the piano is a miniature catapult. So you are shooting the hammer at the strings and catching and reloading it. Let me find a place to put this so I can talk with my hands. So it's a miniature catapult, and you're shooting the hammer at the string and catching and reloading it. You have to be out of the way of the string or it has no room to ring. And there's 10,000 moving parts. That's the action, is the series of miniature catapults. All of the moving parts in the action essentially are wooden hinges, and those are called flanges. There's a handful of different types of flanges. Modern pianos, we've really gone down to one, but in this era there were a couple different approaches. So you can imagine, I've taken some pictures of these, but I can't access them while I'm recording the video. A wooden hinge with a metal pin that goes through it. And in some cases, it's holding the other wooden component with that pin going through it. And in some cases, the pin is going through and there's a jaw, a brass jaw that is gripping that axle or that pin. And that's called a butt plate. So your piano has both. Most of the hinges are just wooden components that have a metal axle or center pin between them, and some of them are the brass jaws. So the center pin or the axle of that moving part, you can't just have metal in contact with wood because it would squeak. So every single one of the sides of the hinge, instead of just having a hole drilled through it for this pin to go through that we're going to function off of, the holes are actually bushed with felt so that they don't squeak. And that center pin has been moving in this orientation between these parts for the age of the piano. And what happens over time is that the center pin starts to walk out one side or the other. And as it does that, it gyrates in its motion instead of allowing the other component to move when in just one plane. And the metal of the pin starts to pull out or widen the bushing inside the drill hole. So that's happened in a bunch of places on the piano. The hammers of your piano are using the brass jaw, which is, for its age, the brass jaws are in great shape. But this is responsible for when we're playing this piano, you can see the hammers are just really wiggly on the way to the strings. And that is its center pin. The brass jaw is soft because it's brass and it's 100 years old. And so the brass has started to bend and can't really get a good grip on the pin. And the center pins are walking, so they're starting to burrow out the felt bushings on the inside. So our hammers are all doing this. And I took out, or the mid-range, the most played area, I took out a handful of these components to see if there'd be an effective repair. In some cases, just going for the worst first, where I could see with a flashlight between the components that the center pin was walking out dramatically, take that component out, which is its own origami of parts, reinsert the pin and get the brass jaw to grip again. And even having executed the repair, while the play on the way to the string is less, there's still some play on the way to the string. And this might be one of those grandma piano issues. When you have a grandma that's lived to be 100 years old and she smokes cigars every day, you let her smoke cigars. So I don't know how cost effective it's going to be, even if we remove the flange, reinsert the center pin, and get the softened brass jaw to grip a little tighter. It's still going to be wobbling on the way to the string. We might just live with that if we're able to accent the string. So we've backed off of that most thorough, traditional, yet intrusive repair. And now we're going to talk about some of the other things we've encountered. The firing pin of our miniature catapult. So we're shooting the hammer at the string and catching and reloading it, but we have to be out of the way or the string can't ring. So that's done by escapement, which is a little jack, an L shape, and as the component moves toward the hammer, it is stopped and rotated out of the way, and this is what allows the hammer to bounce off the string while not just jamming into your finger again. That's called let off or escapement. In one case, one of the hammers that really resisted returning had a bound center pin, which looks like it had either had liquid damage or some sort of tightener put on it, so that the jack was too firm to even turn. So that's been repinned. Again, the center pin through the cloth bushing wooden hinge. That's been repinned so that it's got freedom of motion. Also, the jack post, which holds it in place, was fractured and leaning sideways, so that's been re-glued. And then there's a handful of back checks that had disengaged themselves because the piano's a million years old, and because it's hot hide glue from, I'm gonna guess, 1900 something, if not a little earlier. We can look up the serial number in the piano atlas. I don't have it with me, but I'll take a picture of the serial number so I can do that. So the piano is a miniature catapult. The hammer hits the string and bounces off. Well, it has to be stopped on the way back, or it's going to smash into other components and you're going to feel it jarring inconsistently in your hands. That's called the back check. And there's two components that are two moving parts that have to intersect to catch each other. They arrest the movement of the hammer, and then on an upright, as your fingers come back up, the components can clear each other and you can get another strike. On a grand, that happens faster because the grand piano is a miniature automatic catapult in that it reloads faster. So this is the action of your piano here on your living room floor. This is one of the back checks that's been glued. That's another back check that's been glued. This is the jack post that's been glued and removed from binding. I have no idea if I was pointing to those on camera because I couldn't see what I was doing. And then all the hammers are just doing this on the way to the strings. And we're not going to do anything about that. We're going to see if we can play it and enjoy it. I don't think I'm going to get to tune today, although I'll see how she reacts when I put the action back in. The most likely is that I really need to let this glue dry, because even just putting the re-glued parts back into the action was more wiggle than I would like. This, like I said, it's origami to get the parts to even go back in. So I am going to try to put the action back in the piano. Let's take a look. Okay. That's your piano with no action in it, which is pretty neat. Here's a key outside the instrument. I didn't see any signatures. Lots of times old pianos will be signed. This one just has the serial number on it, which corresponds with the serial number on the steel plate. All right, that's it for now. We're going to talk again in a minute.